There we go.
All good? All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the April edition of the Tell Us About Your Travels program. Today, we have a special presentation by our wonderful Cynthia Keil, who will be telling us about her travels to 3 national parks: Glacier, Grand Teton, and Yellowstone. And for those who had requested a grab-and-go bag, they will be filled with plenty of treats, including trail mixes, which you'll get 2 of them. So they might be these one here. So it'll be 2 of either of these little trail mixes and 1 kind bar right here. So you might get a peanut butter and dark chocolate one, or a dark chocolate nut and sea salt one, or this one that I am holding right in front of my face. So for other people who do come in, we do ask you to mute yourselves upon entry. And if you want to shut off your camera, you can do that. Or if not, then don't let us catch you doing anything naughty, okay? All right. I think we cleaned up plenty of shop right there. So Cindy will do a presentation, and then afterwards we'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll talk about next month's program.
Okay. Now, Emily, are we gonna just do a little 5-minute break, or just leave it that people can come and go, or how do you want to do that?
I think we've been kind of doing like a come and go, but if you feel comfortable doing a 5-minute break, then let us know.
Okay. All right. And maybe we'll just see how it goes.
All right.
So, okay. Thank you. Hi, Joanne. Okay, we'll get started. Okay. All right. So I am just going to give you a really kind of a brief overview of our most wonderful vacation this year, a trip to, as Emily mentioned, 3 parks. We stayed a week at each location, and I would strongly recommend that if you can, that actually would be a minimum to stay a week, because each of these, there's just a lot to see. So so a week doesn't even begin to introduce you to what the park has to offer. So, and this is my husband, Frank. And he will jump in if I leave anything out, and maybe talk about a little later, talk about some of the hikes that he took. So, because we took Frank hikes and Cindy hikes and Frank and Cindy hikes. The Frank and Cindy hikes were not 20 miles. So so he took some of those longer hikes. So let's get started, and we'll start with Grand Teton, which, as you can see, it is a visual bounty, just of awe and wonder. It inspires. If you have an inner poet, Grand Teton will bring it out of you. So, and I do, because I was trained by Joanne, I always do like to include some fun facts. So Grand Teton was established in 1929, and then again in 1950. And the earthquake, and let me get this. And it has 96,000 acres. See what I'm saying about staying there a week? So earthquakes gave rise to the 40-mile long Teton Range, and the 8 peaks tower above 12,000, and The most dominant one, the Grand Teton, rises 13,770 above sea level. So this is to give you a little idea of the lay of the land. This is the map, and this along here is a very scenic route that you will be traveling. And Jackson Lake and Jenny Lake are the most prominent, very scenic lakes there, in which you will see. So this is one of the iconic spots, and it is. In a minute, I'll show you. Actually, here it is. This is the most iconic photographed barn in America. I'm sure that's not an exaggeration. So, and this is part of the Mormon Row district, and that consists of a line of homestead complexes, and they have belonged to Andy Chambers and T.A. Moulton. So the barn that I was showing you is called the Moulton Barn. And again, so now that I brought that to your attention in all the brochures, you are going to see it, because it is a very stunning view with that backdrop of the Tetons. So all of these, they were belonging, of course, to the Moultons. So now we're moving on to Jenny Lake. And Jenny Lake is, it is just beautiful. And from here, from Jenny Lake, are the trailheads of very popular trails. And one of them is Cascade Canyon. And the other is Inspiration Point and Hidden Falls. So you can either walk around on a trail, or it's a very pleasant ride to take these little ferries. So even during the pandemic, they did the ferry. We wore masks, but the ferries did run. So that was really nice. So in here is Hidden Falls. That is one of the shorter hikes and something that everybody can take, because that's only about a maybe 1 to 2 mile trek to see Hidden Falls and Inspiration Point. And then this is the view from Inspiration Point, and that is a little rocky to get there, but it's not a long hike. So the round trip to come to this point, it is roughly about 2 miles. And it's very, very scenic. And if you don't count the thousands of people that are there in a busy year, I can see why it was so named, because it is just very inspiring. But now if you want to take a longer hike, and Frank will talk about these later, if you want to take a longer hike, then Cascade Canyon is, that's a little longer, and that's roughly 3 to 4 miles as you go through the canyon. And that takes you through a canyon and up to a glacier. So, but if you keep going, it will go, and Frank did hike to this, I did not. It will take you, so here it is going through the canyon. So it is just very picturesque. And see, you can see the water coming through. But if you hike all the way up to Inspiration Point, this hike it's a strenuous hike, and it's 15 miles. Now, Frank actually went beyond this to another point. So Frank went 20 miles. So that was not a Frank and Cindy hike. Now, what I did, and it's an alternative to that hike, you can come back down from Cascade Canyon, and then there's a beautiful hike all around. This is Jenny Lake, and that's what I did. I went hiked all around the lake. So these are some of the views from that hike. And as you can see, it's a moderate hike. It's not strenuous, but there's a lot of up and down, and you're always surrounded by beauty. It's a gorgeous hike. And so this is on this side of the lake. Now, another very popular attraction is Maynard's Ferry, and that's called a reaction ferry. And what happens is there's a cable across the river, and it attaches, and just the current of the river pulls them across. So this is the ferry, and these are replicas. And then they still do have that cable, and from time to time they run that ferry. And it was not running when we were there, but they do in other years they run it. Now, if you are not given to hiking, you can drive, and you want to see a beautiful view, there's a drive up Signal Mountain. So you can see a lot of the, beautiful mountain views, but it's driving. So that's just something good to remember. Now, I mentioned Jackson Lake, and that is the largest lake, and the area is 40 square miles, and the depth is 438. So that is a crystal clear mountain lake. And there are on that lake, there are a lot of boats. Given its size, there's a lot of actually big boats. There's a marina there. And so in Jenny Lake, it's mostly no wake, and people take kayak. We took kayaks around, but Jackson Lake does have boat traffic. So you can see here how big that is, and see Jenny's down here. So much, it's a good sized lake. And this is another iconic place where a lot of people, it's probably part of everyone's photo album if you go to Grand Tetons or Jackson, and it's the Elk Antler Lodge or Arch. And there are, actually there's 4 of them at this Jackson Square. So there's one in our album too, with Frank and I standing underneath this arch. It's just part of everyone, where it's a touristy and fun thing to do. And more importantly, right across the way is a very good ice cream store. So we sat there, ate ice cream, and there was a guy, I'd never seen one of these, but he was playing a vacuum powered bagpipe. So instead of doing the part where he was inflating that, it was done with a vacuum. So kind of interesting. We did not go on this, but I did want to mention it to you. It was raining the day we were going to go, but this is a really neat thing to do in the summertime. This is the ski hill gondola, but in the summer, you can take it up. And what is a neat thing to do is you can ride it up free if you're going to go to the restaurant. So that would be you know, you need reservations at the restaurant, but that would be a good thing to keep in mind. And what we were going to do, and that is just go up to the top and you can hike down. That's another option.
Yeah, that hiking down, that you're going to the top of the ski hill at Jackson Hole, and you can hike down the front in the ski hill area, but you can also hike, there's several trailheads that start at the top there and then go on up even higher up into the mountains, up to the Continental Divide. So there are many trails that go off behind Jackson Hole, and you can hike either back down by making a loop around behind the mountain, or you can continue on higher up onto the trails that run, the crest trails that run along the Continental Divide. So that's all for that one.
Okay. Okay, now I know it's hard to pick a favorite park. I certainly love something about all of them, but I have to say Yellowstone it is probably my favorite. You can see that it is very I think otherworldly. And again, I am going to share some facts about Yellowstone. It encompasses 3,472 miles. It is bordered by 3 states. There are more than 10,000 hydrothermal features, and those are geysers, hot springs, mud pots, or fumaroles. And Yellowstone is home to more than 500 active geysers. And I'm going to say it again, 500. I think we saw 480 of them. But it is really amazing. And then Yellowstone Lake has 131 square miles of surface area. It is the largest high elevation lake in North America. It is beautiful. It's home to the largest concentration of mammals in the lower 48. It has 285 species of birds. There are more than 1,800 known archaeological sites. There are 290 waterfalls. Yellowstone houses more than 720,000 museum items. And there are approximately 1,000 miles of hiking trails. So again, if you're going to go there, allow yourself a lot of time and be mindful of where you stay, because know where you want to go, because if you were staying we did stay at the north end of the park, and everything is still a drive. But if what you want to do is at the south end of the park, it will take you 3 or 4 hours to get there, you know. So yeah, about 3.5, I think. But it can take 4 if you're in traffic. So plan where you want to stay. So that's my that advice was given to us when someone we knew realized where we were going to be camping was closer to Grand Teton than Yellowstone. So we were really lucky to have that conversation. Okay, so now back to, if you are in the park, you will hear the word caldera. And that they reference the caldera, and that's it's called Yellowstone super volcano. And it is most of the park are located, the caldera and most of the park is located in the northwest corner of Wyoming. And it measures 70 by 45 kilometers or 40 by 28 miles.
So what she's saying is what the caldera actually is the ancient rim of the former supervolcano that exploded eons ago, and they, for many, many years, and everybody knew it was there. But, eventually, geologists and that people discovered it. So it basically, that rim surrounds Yellowstone. It's basically, the perimeter roughly. But that's what it is. It's the rim of that ancient volcano, and so most of Yellowstone and Yellowstone Lake is in the basin of that caldera. So it's kind of like like Crater Lake, crater in the basin of a exploded volcano. But this was a huge, monstrous, super volcano.
Super.
And eons ago. So that's geological features still there. And
It
that's,
is.
when they say that caldera, that's what they're talking about.
Right. And in answer to the question is the volcano still active? Yes. It is not a worry that it would erupt, but many of the hypothermal features attest to the fact that the ground underneath is still very, very actively heated.
Well, and not only that, but the ground is actually in the basin of the caldera, the ground is actually rising. So and that's because there's pressure from underneath. So eventually there is going to be another eruption, but nobody knows, when it might be. It might be, 400 years in the future. It could be next year, or it could be, another million years. I mean, nobody knows.
Right.
But it still is, to Cindy's point, it still is an active, super volcano.
Right. But it's not thought to be anytime soon.
Correct.
So, as I mentioned, we stayed at the northern part, and that was adjacent to a lot of things that we wanted to see. So we were in Gardner, and it's a very homey town, very nice. And this is an overview of the town, and you can see the Roosevelt Arch in this picture.
And that's because Gardner, which is the north entrance to the park, which is actually in Montana. So because the park borders Montana and Wyoming, mostly, of course, in Wyoming, just bordering, edging on Montana. But that's the original park entrance right there, and that was at Gardner, and that was actually in Montana.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit of trivia: it's named after, it's the Roosevelt Arch, and it wasn't planned to be named that, but when it was dedicated, Roosevelt was there on vacation, so they named it after him. So now one of the first things you run into, that you come across, is when you're at the north end, is Fort Yellowstone. And Fort Yellowstone was constructed because they were under serious threat from poachers killing animals, and so the civilian superintendents were hired to preserve and protect, but it got away from them. It was hard, so they brought in the Army. And so in 1886, men from Company M came to Yellowstone under the command of Captain Moses, and they began what would be 32 years of military protection. So this is a good image of the fort back in 1910. And it's very well preserved at this point. So these are some of the current buildings, and you can take a walking tour of this area. So these are some of them. And wherever you go in Yellowstone, there's all kinds of wildlife. I really like that about it. It's everywhere. And you have to be very careful with driving, because said inhabitants are everywhere. So, and this is a popular hotel in the northern part, Mammoth Hot Springs. So one of my favorite parts at Yellowstone is Mammoth Hot Springs, and it's a large complex on a hill of travertine, and it's created over thousands of years from spring cooled and deposited calcium carbonate. And because of the huge amount of geothermal vents, travertine flourishes. So you see in this that they call it terraces, mammoth terraces. And so this gives you a good idea. Now in the next one, I'll show you a little video of, now some of this is interesting because some of it is liquid, but some of it is actually, it's already petrified. So it really gives it an interesting perspective. And here's another one. So see, this is all petrified, and that, and those are, and it's very hot, and you see the trees. It has killed many of the trees in the area. Here's another one of the terraces. And this is an example of those. Actually, some of them are petrified trees. Now, as you go along on the road from the north entrance, the next place that you go to is Bunsen Peak, and that is a good way to, if you want to go to a high elevation, it's 8,564. If you want to go to a high elevation in a little bit of time, Bunsen Peak is a good opportunity because it's steep, but it's only 2.1 miles. So, so as you can see, it's a beautiful view. And if you just have a little bit of time, it's a good way to go. And we went in the early morning. That is the best time to get on the trails. And you can see this is actually the moon, and this is the sun shining. So it's very pleasant in the morning. Interestingly, I got a side note. There's not a lot of places in the park where your cell phone works, but when we got to the top, my phone rang, and it was one of those junk calls to if I wanted to get an extended warranty. So here you are, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's a beautiful view. Ring, ring, ring. Hey, you need an extended warranty. They're everywhere. So that was Bunsen Peak, and now we're coming down to Norris Geyser Basin. Now we're starting to be coming into the geysers. And in answer to the question, why are there geysers in Yellowstone? Frank talked about it. That is that the magma that fuels the volcano also fuels the thermal features. And the Earth's crust in Yellowstone areas radiate from the margins of the caldera. So it's riddled with fractures. And as a result of these fractures, it's kind of like, I've heard it described as like shaking up a can of pop. You know, the pressure builds up and it just explodes. So like a pressure cooker. So Norris Geyser Basin is the hottest, oldest, and most dynamic of Yellowstone's thermal areas. The highest temperature is 459 degrees Fahrenheit. And the area consists of two areas, Porcelain Basin and the Back Basin. So so you see these, I love I just love the otherworldliness of it and the beautiful blue color. Now, we encountered in our stay, we encountered a number of people who are geyser watchers. And in each day, the projected geyser eruptions are posted on the internet, and they're posted at the ranger station. And so it's not unusual to see people in their lawn chairs sitting out there waiting for a geyser to erupt. So we were lucky to I mean, we saw Old Faithful, and we'll get to that, but we were lucky to see one happen while we were there, because it's not unusual for you to sit and wait and they don't erupt. So this is that back area that we were talking about. And this
Is that
this one,
Prismatic Spring, the last one?
no, Prismatic Spring is in a different section. So, and this is part of the, maybe it's very a desolate part of the Geyser Basin. So we're coming into, that was Norris, and now we're coming into the part where the Midway Geyser Basin. The Midway Basin is where the Grand Prismatic Spring is. And this is one of the more famous springs in Yellowstone. It's the largest, one of the most brilliant ones. And it's a result of magma, of course, from the active volcano. So this is what at the Midway Basin is the Grand Prismatic Spring, Excelsior Geyser, and then Turquoise Pool and Opal Pool. And so what makes the Grand Prismatic Spring so grand? Well, it's deeper than a 10-story building, and it is the third largest spring in the world, and it's bigger than a football field. So, so here it is, and as you can see, it is that is not photoshopped. That is how blue it is. And then why is this a rainbow of colors? It has bright bands of orange, yellow, and green, and the layers get their hues from different species of heat-loving bacteria that live in the progressively cooler water. So I hate to turn it into all these facts, but I do think it's interesting to know why that is so blue, and what the heck are these heat-loving bacteria that can even survive in that heat. That's interesting to me. So so this area is as I mentioned, that is not photoshopped. That is how beautiful and how blue it is. Look at that. Now we're coming to what would be the main attraction to many people, where the Upper Geyser Basin. Did you have anything to add to that, Frank?
Well, no, not really, but just to for clarification of where they're at, you talk about these different geyser basins, and really there's three major areas where the geysers are grouped together. And Cindy talked already about the Mammoth location is at the very north end of the park, up there close to Gardner. And then the Norris location she mentioned is about halfway down.
No, I'm showing them the map.
Yeah, about halfway down, going north and south. And then these others, the Midway, lower and upper basins and Old Faithful, are really in a group together,
right
at the southwest corner of the park.
Right.
So there's three big major areas, and then with all kinds of geyser features in each one of them.
So, and at this, as I mentioned, the main attraction, I think main attraction, at this location in Upper Geyser Basin, there are all of these geysers. So that is really the main place. And this is Old Faithful. And
Yeah, that Upper Geyser Basin is actually walking distance from Old Faithful. It's close to, they're on that same area.
they're all in that area.
Right.
And as I mentioned, and that's another view. We took a little hike, and this is up from a hill, and this is one of the lodges. And then the geyser we were able to see is Grand Geyser, and that's the world's tallest predictable geyser. And when you say predictable, it's predictable sometimes. So they projected that it would go off, but it could be within an 8-hour period. So
And it only goes off from, like, is it once a week or something?
right.
Yeah.
So it's once
so
a
the
week.
times are just estimates and they're approximate. So they
Right.
could be, as Cindy says, so within hours. I mean, it could be spread over hours, 8 hours, or even, I think some of them might even vary by as much as 24 hours. So they know
Right.
roughly when they're gonna go off over a long period of time. They have an average time span between them. But that's why you have geyser watchers, because nobody knows exactly when they're gonna go off. So people end up sitting there sometimes all day waiting for one.
Right. And we happened to run into a guy who worked at the park, and he said, oh, now the Grand Geyser, it always goes off. It goes off 15 minutes before when they say it's going to. So you should head over there right now. So we went over, and we only waited 5 minutes, and it went off. So it is exciting when these things do go off.
Yeah, because that one was predicted to go off at, I don't remember the exact time, but say it was 7 o'clock that evening. It was predicted to go off, and so we were gonna go over there about 7 o'clock, and this, park ranger had said we should go over there before that. We went over there before that, and to Cindy, as Cindy said, we got there just in time to see it. It was, it only happens once a week or so. The only time it was gonna happen that we were there, and it was a dramatic display.
Right.
And then as we were leaving, we met crowds of people coming up hoping to see it, and they had already missed it.
So here it was. So it's kind of neat. People cheer when they actually do go off.
And it goes on like that for about half hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a spurt and it's gone, it keeps erupting. So the eruption is
Right. So and you can see the little vent holes there. So we were excited that we got to see a geyser go off, because we weren't going to bring our lawn chairs. So this is an idea of the whole area. And sometimes they just fool you. They look like they're going to go off, and then that's all they do. But this is what they look like before they go off, before anything happens. So it's hard to believe that it's going to just blow like that. So it's really, I think, very interesting. And so these are other geysers in that area. Now we mentioned they were all in this area. And so, now we're headed up in the area where it is Yellowstone River. And we're in what they call the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. And this canyon, which is made by the Yellowstone River, is 800 to 1,200 feet. And it's around 2.5 miles of the most colorful section. So you see, we were at this, a good place to be is at this grand view, and that's where we were, and you can see the waterfalls. And it's a beautiful upper falls. Now you can hike down to it. Some years, there's actually a trail that goes down called Uncle Tom's Trail. That was closed this time, but there are other times you can hike down. We hiked halfway down, but it's a beautiful area. And you can see why it is so called on these canyon walls.
Actually, it's really, really gorgeous. It's really worth seeing.
Yeah.
Really dramatic, and the photos are very good, but they still don't do it justice compared to what you see
Right.
really being there. This is actually one of the major features of the park. I really enjoyed it, and there's several hikes on the rim you can take on both sides. We did that, and it's one of actually one of the must-see features of Yellowstone.
Mhm.
And I don't know, people don't know it so much because you mainly hear and think about Old Faithful and the geysers. And of
Mhm.
course, that's dramatic too, and a must-see. But this, is much lesser known, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, but it is fabulously scenic also.
Right, and also one of the features is a mud volcano, and that's created by mud or slurries, and it's not like the igneous volcanoes, and it's not driven by magnetic activity. So this particular guy really liked the heat generated by this volcano. And the Black Dragon's Cauldron, it's another one. It is another feature that is a mud pot.
Yeah,
So
they call them mud volcanoes, but they're really just
they're mud pots.
Yeah, it's not a volcano at all. It's a geyser. It's a hot springs feature that has a mud slurry, mud sediment in it. That's all.
Now, a departure from Old Faithful and the geysers is the Lamar Valley, and we went through very early. And if you go early, if you were going through there about 6 a.m., then you get to see a lot of wildlife. They're headed down from the hills to go graze. So it's even a little difficult to even drive through here. But you get to see wildlife close up.
That's the home of one of the few free left in North America, few free ranging buffalo herds. So and they live primarily in that Lamar Valley, and the highway goes right through there. So you can drive through there. The people that really want to do wildlife, that's another one of the must-see attractions of Yellowstone.
There are tours that take people out there.
Yeah, just to see that.
Just to see that. And then you can take a scenic drive. We got up, went through Lamar Valley, and you can take a scenic drive to Bear's Tooth Highway. And it's a beautiful mountain drive. And then you drive through there, and we had lunch in Red Lodge, Montana. And so this is a really pretty drive.
Yeah, let me just add on to that a little bit, hon.
Mhm.
That Beartooth Highway is a nationally designated scenic route. So it is fabulously scenic. It runs over that ridge of the Beartooth Mountains there, and goes from the northeast corner of Yellowstone Park up into Montana, Red Lodge, Montana, as Cindy said. But I can't remember if it goes over the Continental Divide on the way, or if it's just over that ridge. But anyhow, it is another gloriously scenic drive.
Really?
And yeah. I mean, they named it national, one of the national scenic highways for a good reason. And if you make it to Yellowstone, that is actually out of the park. It really starts out leaving the northeast corner of the park and drives up to Red Lodge. And I don't remember how far Red Lodge is. It seems to me it's like 60 miles or something like that. We drove up to Red Lodge, had lunch, came back the same day, did the whole trip the same day. including going through Lamar Valley. You go through Lamar Valley and way out there too. So we killed 2 birds with 1 stone. But that was really worth doing. I mean, that for Yellowstone, I would put that on my list of must sees too. Along with Lamar Valley, the hot springs and the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. Those are really, my humble opinion, the must see features in Yellowstone. There are, of course, miles and miles, hundreds of miles of trails in Yellowstone Park. We didn't do a lot of hiking in Yellowstone. We did a couple that Cindy mentioned, like that Bunsen Peak up by Mammoth Hot Springs. I did another one up in that area called Sepulchre Mountain Trail, which is another beautiful area, and it's not much travel because it's kind of right up on the north edge of the park, and so it's not very well known. But it was, I mean, again, any kind of mountain hikes you do up there are going to be gloriously scenic, and that trail I started out at 5 o'clock in the morning, made all the way to the top, over the backside, and down around the mountain, and then back to Mammoth Hot Springs area. And I got back to Hot Springs area sometime around, I don't know, maybe 2 in the afternoon. But in that entire loop from 5 a.m. till 2 in the afternoon, first of all, I didn't see anybody until 12:30 in the afternoon, when I was almost back down already. I was all the way around the back of the mountain and coming out of the mountain. I think I saw 2 other couples of hikers, in that entire distance. So it was neat because it was so, quiet and serene and pristine. And maybe it wouldn't be that quiet if you started later in the day, and also maybe because of the COVID thing, some of the trails weren't as crowded as they would be on normal years. But it was, besides being gloriously scenic, it was wonderfully serene.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is a panoramic view of just what a beautiful area that is. Okay, now this is the last portion, which is Glacier. Do people want to take a break, or we'll just keep going, or?
That's kind of you, hon.
Yeah. If you guys want to raise your hand, or if just mention in the chat box if you want to do a 5-minute break, or we can carry on through all of this and do the 5-minute break before the Q&A session.
Okay, we can do that, yeah.
Before we start on Glacier, hon, just one more trivia point about Yellowstone. When we were talking about Teton, I had mentioned the Continental Divide, and I was misspoken there. The Continental Divide doesn't run through Teton. That was the Teton Crest Trail that I was talking about that runs along the crest of the Tetons. But the Continental Divide actually runs right through Yellowstone. It runs through it runs southeast to northwest diagonally through the lower half of the park. The trivia thing is both the Yellowstone rivers and the Snake rivers start along that Continental Divide in the southeast corner of the park. So the Yellowstone River starts, up on that Continental Divide, and then runs down into Yellowstone Lake north, and then the Yellowstone River continues out of Yellowstone Lake and runs north up into Montana and eventually out to the Missouri River. And then, but just on that same location on the other side of the divide, still in the southeast corner of Yellowstone Park, is where the Snake River starts. And the Snake River runs south, and it's on the west side of the Continental Divide, so it goes out to the Pacific. So it runs south into the Teton Park, into Jackson Lake and the Teton Park. Jackson Lake is the big lake that Cindy was talking about. That's the heart of Teton Park. Yellowstone Lake is the heart of Yellowstone Park. So anyhow, Snake River runs down through the Tetons, and then eventually up through, Idaho and Oregon and Washington. So anyhow, that just a little bit of trivia about those major Western rivers. So that's all I got in regards to Yellowstone.
Okay, and now we're moving on to Glacier. In Glacier, the interesting aspect to Glacier is that part of the park is in Canada. The Waterton Glacier International Peace Park is in Canada. Now, we would like to go back because when we went, part of the park was closed because the Indian reservation, due to COVID, was closed. So this part in the St. Mary's area, that part was closed. So, and plus it is a beautiful park to visit. So, so it was established in 1910. Going to the Sun Road, which we will talk about a lot, was completed in 1932. Total number of lakes is 762. And most important, the total number of glaciers is 26. And there's thought to be more than that. But those are the ones, the active glaciers that they monitor. Square miles of the park is 1583. So that so Glacier in itself is it is
1583, you mean 1583, right?
yeah, yes.
1500 is like some million, acres, right?
Right, correct. And I would like to point out this, the route of this going to the sun. And you'll see that it is, in this part of it, it is very steep and has a lot of curves to it. So there are restrictions on the length of your vehicle to travel that road. And when we were up there, do you remember the length of, Frank? Something like maybe 35 feet or something. If your rig is longer than that, you can't go on it.
No, it's way shorter than that. It's something like only,
Is it?
it's something like only 25 feet,
Right.
the length of a long pickup truck.
Right.
Because the switchbacks are so tight and the road's so narrow and there's unfenced, cliffs on the edge of the road. You can't tow a trailer up there. No trailers, no motorhomes, well, that's it. No travel trailers, no motorhomes.
You said that a guy with a motorhome got stuck up
Yeah,
there.
a guy didn't believe the sign. He tried to drive his motorhome up there and he got halfway up the trail and couldn't make the turns around the turns are so sharp on your right side. It'll be a straight sheer cliff down, 1,000 feet. And on your inside, on the inside of the turn is a cliff going straight up. And a lot of times it'll have an overhang that juts out. And so, if your vehicle is too high, like a motorhome and stuff, they can't even get under the overhang. And so the state police were up there, with the guy, trying to plow traffic because I think they had to back the guy out of there, back him back down. They couldn't get that rig through there, It just makes you wonder what some people are thinking,
Yeah. But the most scenic drive through there is going to the Sun's Road. And it's a 2-lane highway that, as we mentioned, snakes through the park, dividing the park into the east and west regions. And the Continental Divide goes through Logan Pass. And it is truly one of the most spectacular scenic drives in America. So it is a 52-mile route. It's open all year round. Although you won't catch me going through there in January. And you'll see, I do have some video of it. So one of our first stops on the Going to the Road drive is Lake McDonald's Lodge. And we were able to stay in this historic lodge. It was built in 1913. And so we were very fortunate because a lot of places, the lodges are closed. So we felt very lucky. It is a beautiful and historic place.
Cindy was saying, if you don't mind me interjecting here again, the Glacier is divided basically into a west side and an east side by the Continental Divide. The Continental Divide runs basically north and south through Glacier. And the east side of the park was closed this year, so we didn't get to do much on the east side. And on the east side, some of the most famous, of these old lodges are on the east side. One of them is Many Glacier Park on Lake Sherborne. And that's where we had reservations where we were gonna stay, and we had to drop those, and we were fortunately able to get reservations on that Lake McDonald Lodge, which really is a premier lodge on the west side of the park on Lake McDonald. Lake McDonald is the biggest lake on the west side of the park, and really the central hub for the west side, activities and access to trails and going to Sun Highway and that sort of thing. So we did some of the best features of the park on the east side of the park. We did not get to see. We spent a week there, Cindy said, and in that week, quite frankly, we didn't get to do even see half of what we would like to see on the west side of the park.
Right, but
you could spend there 2 weeks a year there for several years, I think, before you would ever see and do everything there is to do in that park.
right, but what we did see was gorgeous.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But it is worth going back to, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you could go back there year after year and just see new things.
And a lot of people do. And this is the inside. It really was. It was beautiful. And you see this. I had showed you this beautiful fireplace that they had.
Yeah, the picture doesn't show how big that fireplace is, but you can basically stand up.
You could stand in it. And then this is McDonald Lake, and that's just a beautiful mountain lake.
That's a tour boat. It's an antique, but it's still running. It's an old tour boat from, I think it was built back in the 1920s or something, but really, really cool feature.
It takes you around.
Ride around Lake McDonald on that old boat. Of course, it was built just for touring Lake McDonald.
Right, and so that is right here on our tour of going to the sun. And then we took now from we took a little side trip up and went up here, and this is Polebridge, and that's a neat little settlement, and all that's there really is this most wonderful bakery, and this is a restaurant. They had a lot of tables set up outside, but this bakery is, people drive there for the baked goods. Like they have cinnamon rolls that are this big and they come out of the oven. It's wonderful.
That Polebridge is
it's wonderful.
It's a little known wonderful gem feature of the park. It's in the northwest corner of the park, and it's right on the border between the park and it must be Idaho, I guess. It's right on the edge of the park. And it's about halfway between what's the town, the south end of the park, West Glacier. So from the southern point, where West Glacier, where most of the activity on the west side of the park originates, from there up to the Canadian border, Polebridge is about halfway along that distance, and halfway is I don't know, it might be 60 miles, something like that. But anyhow, it's out of the way. It's off the beaten track, so not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of people go there, but our recommendation is, if you happen to be up the Glacier, that's another thing. That's another place to add to your list.
It's really cool, and
it's a great place to go for lunch. Home baked goods. And
home baked goods, and then this is it's a really outdoor restaurant, and they had a band. It was really neat. And near there, we went on a hike to a ranger station, Cyclone Lookout. You can
again,
see
the
it there.
Don't do it justice, but the views are out of sight.
Yeah, but that was a very nice hike. And you can see the panoramic view. And then one of the most, how do I guess I can There we go. One of the most accessible hikes for people is Avalanche Creek in this area. And you can see it has a very beautiful waterfall, but it's the accessible trail is Trail of the Cedars. And you can take wheelchairs even on it. It's a raised boardwalk, and a really interesting aspect of this area is all these beautiful towering cedar trees. So that's beautiful. And then going along, I'm going to the sun, you come up to what's called the loop, and that's a very tight turn. So these are some of the stops. One of them is a famous one, Woman Falls, and it towers down. And this is actually some of the sites.
Going to the Sun Highway, that the road that starts on the west side of the park or east side. We started on the west side, that's where we're staying, but it switchbacks and works its way up the Glacier Basin to the Logan Pass, which is a continental divide, and then back on the other side to East Glacier.
Right. Now, to just give you some idea of the road itself, and to show you, they didn't run last year, but sometimes in regular years, they have little red buses that shuttle people around. Tour buses. So, but anybody can ride them. So you can get, if you want to hike and you park your car somewhere else, to keep cars off this road, they have those buses. So I want to show you this little video of it.
So what she's talking about is there's a lot of trailheads start along that road.
This series of waterfalls delights early season visitors to the park as they drive right by, and for westbound travelers, right through its spray. More than one savvy driver has driven just a tad closer to the edge at this spot, surprising passengers in the back seat with a hefty dose of clear, cold mountain water as it splashes through the open windows. By August, the gushing torrent dries up to a mere trickle and looks more like a weeping wall than the impressive cascade seen when the road is first open in early summer. Most people don't realize that this entire series of waterfalls is a remnant of the construction of the Going to the Sun Road. As engineers carved through the rock here, they created a cliff. Water from springs and melting snows above pour over and onto the road surface below. Special drains were designed in the road to allow the bulk of the water to pass below the pavement. But on days of especially heavy flow, a small stream of water covers both lanes of traffic for a short distance.
So that gives you some idea of just how narrow that road is. And one of a very neat feature is called West Tunnel. And it was constructed between 1927 and 26 and 27. And it's an iconic spot because of this. It's a little side window in that tunnel. And you can get out here and it overlooks Heaven Sent. This area is Heaven Sent. So that was really neat. That's a neat area. So that is here was the Weeping Wall. And now, and then the West Tunnel is right in here. So now we're at where Frank was talking about, Logan's Pass. And that's right on, it's right on the Continental Divide. So all this area right here is just a little trail that comes right out from Logan's, the visitor center. So they have some little walking trails, or in this area, this is a trailhead that goes out to Hidden Lake. And Frank and I both went on this trail. It's Highline Trail. It's one of the very popular trails in Glacier.
Highline Trail is one of the most well-known and probably one of the most popular trails in Glacier.
Right.
And it starts right there at the Logan Pass Visitor Center. and it runs north right along the Continental Divide. So it runs not up on top of the ridge, but right just below the ridge, or, right alongside of the mountain that forms the Continental Divide. And you walk along, soon you'll show you some of the pictures along the ridge there for quite a distance, and then you start working your way up to the top of the mountain and end up at a pass right on the Continental Divide, where you can look all the way out to the east end of the park. And I don't know how far that is. It's probably 50 or 60 miles out there, and you can see the other lakes that are on the east side of the Continental Divide, and then look back at all the lakes and these huge valleys like the one you're seeing in this picture here, kind of left center of the picture, that green deep valley. See how washed out at the U-shape it is? That's because it was cut out by a glacier eons ago. The valleys that are cut out by rivers have a sharp bottom at the bottom, like the Grand Canyon does. And those ones that washed out U-shape, that's because they were ground out by ice flows. So
Right.
and all the valleys you see up in Glacier all look like that. They were all carved out by glaciers.
Well, and I would like to point out also that this is such a narrow shelf here that there is a handrail. And when you're cable, yeah, when you're walking along, it's a two-way trail. So if someone is coming the other way, it's in your best interest to hang on.
Yeah, again, the picture doesn't do it justice. You can't see in the picture how narrow the trail is there.
Well, right there that's how.
Yeah, there's narrow
one of the
spots
narrow spots.
and there's no guardrail or fence below it. If you go off the edge, you're going to slide down a ways.
Now Frank was hiking
Here's
with a
further
guy.
up on that same trail.
Yeah, and he took this picture of a fellow hiker.
The picture looks like that because this was early in the morning and it was after sunrise, but sunrise was on the other side of the Continental Divide. We were on the west side of the divide, on the west side of the ridge, and the sun had already risen east, of course, out of the east, and it was shining above the mountains and lighting up those mountains behind us. But it wasn't shining down on us yet because it was way too early in the morning. We were still in the shadow of the mountains. Same here. See, it looks gray.
And
There's
this is
some
the
overcast,
road.
but mainly we're just in the shadow of the mountains.
So you can see the going to the sun road down here. And you can see what a little narrow shelf that is. And then this is that valley. So it is a beautiful hike and spectacular scenery.
Yeah, so you're getting higher up.
Right now again. And then is this
This is the point I was just
I didn't-
describing, where you're on top of the pass now. So it's at somewhere around, I don't remember exactly the elevation, but somewhere around above 11,000 feet. The tree line's at approximately 11,000 feet, and we're above the tree line. But you're looking east here, and in the bottom right corner of the picture is the remnants of that glacier, Grinnell Glacier up there, and all those little ponds down there. They're actually lakes. They look like ponds because they're so far away, but you can see the U-shaped cutout valley, green valley going from lake to lake to lake. That's where the huge monumental glacier ran eons ago and carved out those lakes. And the glacier is still there to the right of the picture, but of course it's very small compared to what it was eons ago. But you can see the broken off ice pieces still in the lake there. And this is in August, and there's still, of course, because it's a glacier, there's still ice up there. But there's quite a bit more to the right of it, doesn't show in the picture. That's all.
And then this I got from the.
Yeah, this is just another one, a view looking the other direction from the same location.
And then one of the largest glaciers is Jackson Glacier, but I included this because you can just see all of the glaciers that are included, that you can see, that are included in the part of the park. So this is Jackson Glacier. And then these are a number of the ones that are mentioned. And then moving on down the going to the Sun Road. Now we're at St. Mary Falls Trailhead. And right up here is the road. And there's you just hike down to this just a very beautiful hike too. Not very strenuous. And it goes down to St. Mary's Falls and also St. Mary's Lake. Okay, well, and that concludes our presentation. Do we have any questions? Now I don't know how to unmute you guys.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, we can still do like a quick break and then we can do the questions afterwards. So that'll be fine with everybody.
Mhm.
All right, sounds good. So probably be back here in 5.
Oh, good.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Emily.
You're very welcome. Well, yeah, that was a really good presentation there, Cindy.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad Frank participated because I really like, our 2 different perspectives.
Mhm.
I'm all about the pictures
And he's all about the hiking.
and he's all about the hiking. No, and I hope did I include too many fun facts?
No,
Oh, no.
I do love including fun facts,
Well, you need to give the whole thing perspective.
right?
Yeah.
So it adds to the appreciation when you understand some of those background trivia, or if you will, details about it.
and I love it when the 2 of you do your program together.
I do. We have 2 different, an engineer and an artist. It's 2 different perspectives. So, yeah, I am all about, that's a cool picture. And then I get back home and I have to figure out what it was I took pictures of.
And it happened.
I wish we were able to do this live because we got a lot of books
Yeah.
that we picked up that were mainly hiking guides, trail maps and hiking guides.
Well-
There's some really, really neat, hiking guide, books about the park that have not only just the hiking trails, but have stories about them. And lots of pictures and that you're going to see of the terrain and landscapes you're going to see on the trails. And I think people would really enjoy being able just to lead through these things and look at it, see what there is available.
Right.
And
So I think the first live one that we do, we should be able to bring all our stuff.
Yeah.
People, that would be fun to just have, some of the displays of stuff that we would have brought if, that would work, don't you think, Joanne?
Yeah, it's hard to do it virtually though.
I know, but if we were to do it like live in person, then yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, even, it would just be good to include.
like books like this, it's hard to really show people what there is. It's nothing like being able to pick the thing up and lead through it.
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When I was doing my Ireland program last year, I was like all getting ready for it. I was going to show all these displays and everything, and then
Right.
it happened.
Yeah, right.
No, but I was glad that you made those videos. It was nice.
Yeah, I
It
know.
was nice.
I was gonna say, I don't know how I would be able to cram in 4 months into like almost an hour and a half presentation.
No, I know. I think it is hard, but it just is an overview. And I really do think if you were only going to go to Yellowstone, for example, and some people are only there one day. I guess I would go to that Grand Prismatic Spring, and I would go to the basin, the upper basin where all the geysers are.
Mammoth.
Yeah.
Well, Mammoth is worth it, but that's a couple hours to drive
You just meant the upper
It-
basin by. So
by
the-
Old Faithful.
The
Yeah,
main features are the Prismatic Spring and Old Faithful as far as the geysers go.
yeah.
And then, but the other things are like we talked about, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone too. And those are real easily accessible. Like Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, you can drive right to it.
You can
And
drive.
the
Yeah.
walk to the, overlooks is extremely short. And a lot of it is like Cindy was saying is wheelchair accessible. So
Mhm.
I was gonna say, Cindy said Yellowstone is her favorite, and mine was just the opposite. I would say the significant difference you can see in the geology and topography of the parks is that Yellowstone is primarily formed by volcanic activity, and the other parks, Teton and Glacier, were formed by tectonic plate movement. And so the features are much more rugged and jagged and, dramatically aggressive looking, rocks features, where in Yellowstone, the mountains are more like giant hills. They're not they're not as rocky and dramatic looking as they are in Glacier and Teton. So that being said, just characteristic of what they look like, what that really leads to is from a hiker's perspective, the Teton area and Glacier areas are much more, the hiking areas are much more scenic, and they're the more aggressive. Of course, the parks are so huge, there's plenty of trails at all different difficulty levels.
Mhm.
But in general, the ones in Glacier and Teton are more oriented towards people that want to do more physical hiking rather than just walking along a flat trail. They're actually doing some climbing and hiking.
Mhm.
And so from that perspective, both those other two parks were more interesting to me. And actually, both of those two parks, there's miles of trails in Yellowstone.
Interrupt you on this. I mean, I love your talk about Grand Teton and Glacier, but I think our 5 minutes is about up, so I think we can get started with the Q&A session.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Are you going to mention about the grab and go bags?
Yes, so I did mention it earlier, but I will repeat again. So the grab and go bags, they do consist of some goodies. So for those who showed up a little later, they do contain 2 of these trail mixes here. Can't wait to try them out because they look so good. And 1 of these lovely Kind bars. You also have strawberry and dark chocolate, nut, and sea salt, and this one too. And we also have just 1-page bibliography of materials that you can find at the library, as well as Hoopla and Libby. So let's get started with the Q&A session, shall we? All right. So does anybody have any questions for Cindy and Frank? You can speak up or write in the chat or raise your hand.
Yeah, my question is, what's her next trip?
Well, it was going to be Alaska, but I don't know. Now we don't know our next trip.
We got a couple that are on the list, and we don't know, to Cindy's point, exactly which one, but we want to do a tour of Southwest Utah, particularly Bryce Canyon,
Oh, that's
the
true.
Grand Staircase, and what is it, Zion,
Escalon.
Capitol Reef, those down there. So that's one. Then the other one would be to travel to Alaska again. Probably drive up through Canada, go up through Jasper, and what's the other big national park up there next to Jasper. But go through those areas, and then then up to Alaska, and then of course Alaska's got so many features. I won't start listing them, but we had planned to spend about a month up in Alaska, and so that's still on the list. We are just going to have to wait till of this whole polar business is done, because right now you can't even get into Canada, let alone drive through.
See.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Bonnie, that I cut in before I saw your hand go up.
All right.
Yeah.
Bonnie?
Oh, Bonnie's on mute.
Bonnie is my mom, by the way. So, hey,
Hi.
Mom, you need to unmute.
There you go.
Go.
I wanted to know, what was the trail in Glacier that you were talking about, that the sun hadn't risen yet where you were at?
That was a Highline Trail.
That's a highline turn.
Highline. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it starts at Logan Pass. It's just a fabulous trail.
Perfect. So looks like we got a chat here from Daryl, and he asks, how many times have you been to those parks?
One.
Yeah, that was the first
First
time that we
time.
went to each of those three.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah,
Do you ever plan on going back to either one of those parks?
Definitely we want to go back to Glacier.
if I were to, I don't know if we will go back, because there's so many parks we haven't been to yet that are already on our list, but I think Cindy is right that, you know, how do you say what your favorite is? But I would probably go back to Glacier first, because it is so huge. It's the biggest one, and there's so much of it that we have not seen yet. Like I mentioned earlier, the whole east half of the park was closed, and you know, so we haven't been to any of that except to look at it from the Continental Divide.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Cindy and Frank?
Yes, Cindy, did you guys do any excursion or did you just do things on your own?
We just did things on our own. Now, having said that, one excursion we did do, we went on a river rafting trip, you know, and I went in the raft and Frank was in a kayak, and that was at Glacier, and that was really beautiful. That was a lot of fun. So that was.
The other thing we had planned, but we didn't do, was because we were going to do the Alaska trip this year, and so we had several excursions planned in Alaska. I mean, one was, you know, one of the flights around Denali, for instance. You know, several others. A train trip. What's that train trip in southern Alaska there? I can't remember what it is now. But anyhow.
I'll think of it.
Yeah, it'll come back to us later. So
Right.
we had several excursion activities like that, and you know, then we're going to do some of the, you know, the glacier watching and whale watching, you know, boat excursions in Alaska too. But all that's, you know, on hold for another day. But to answer the question shortly, as Cindy said, we really didn't do a lot of excursion on this
trip. The only, we rented kayaks and we went around Jenny Lake, and then we went on that raft trip, the river raft trip.
Yeah, we paddled all the way around the perimeter of Jenny Lake in kayaks one day. That was really nice.
Nice.
So that was beautiful.
Oh,
How long did that take you?
Probably 3 hours.
Yeah.
Something like
Nice.
that.
It looks like Daryl has another question. He asks, how did you plan to get all those things into your trip?
How we did bring all these guidebooks and just mapped everything out.
Well, I
I
didn't hear
think
all the
so.
question.
How did we plan to get all of those things in our trip? Right.
Oh, yeah, we did some, well, actually, a lot of these trail books we bought on the trip, but we had done quite a bit of planning ahead of time,
Before
kind of
we
laid
went.
out where we're definitely where we're gonna stay, because we made reservations in campgrounds and all the national parks, which that were hard to make because the campgrounds, because the lodges were all closed, the campgrounds were all full, so you had to make reservations ahead of time. So we had actually a fair amount of structure to it, and we roughly knew, you know, the things we wanted to do. The specific hikes and that, we didn't work out that detail till we got there, but we had a pretty good rough plan in place before we started.
Well, and the other thing I did not mention that in Glacier especially, they have a very serious bear patrol that they do. Like every day they go out and rangers check for the presence of bears. And if they find them, they close the trail for that day. So it is not unusual for some of the trails, the hikes that you want to do, they close them for that day.
Right, that happened to us a couple different
Couple
times.
times.
We had
Yeah.
one trail planned, each on a couple different days, particular trails planned, and it ended up that trail was closed for bear activity. And so we had to go and do another trail. But that wasn't hard to be able to ad lib like that, because there are so many trails.
So you
So
have
much
to
do.
have plan A and plan B.
Yeah.
I see. All right. Does anybody have any more questions? I know it's a little past 30. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, did you visit the or hike on the Grinnell Glacier Trail at all?
Yeah, that's off the Highline Trail. That one picture she was showing you was the edge of that Grinnell Glacier.
Okay.
The runoff from it, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And when you guys drove back to Michigan, did you like transit through the Dakotas or?
Mhm.
Because there's a couple of parks in there
Yeah,
that
we
are kind of cool
we
too.
went through the Badlands. We didn't stop because we had been there before, but we went through, South Dakota, the Black Hills and the Badlands, yeah.
And what was the total like duration of the trip? Like how long were you guys traveling for?
It was about 7 weeks.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Right, because we went to Colorado to see our kids. And we went to the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado, and then went to Durango and rode the Durango and Silverton train. And then we went Montrose, and we went to Black Canyon National Park there.
On the Gunnison, Black
So
Canyon of the
that's a
Gunnison.
beautiful, yeah.
That's another really cool park that not many people know about.
What was it? Gunnison, you said?
Yeah, on the Gunnison River,
Yeah.
Black Canyon of the Gunnison.
Right.
So the
Okay.
Gunnison River is the one that runs into the Colorado River up in the northwest corner of Colorado, runs into the Colorado at a place called Grand Junction. And so that Grand Junction is the Colorado and the Gunnison Rivers. And so down by Montrose area is nearby to Montrose, maybe 10 miles outside of town, is this canyon feature where the Gunnison River runs through this Black Canyon area. That was, it's black because it's primarily volcanic rock. So anyhow, it's really, steep, straight down, and it's steep and deep. I don't know how it's 1,000 feet deep or something like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on a Google Maps here. It's 9 miles northeast of Montrose, so that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, it's another one. If you're in that area,
Yeah,
it's a must.
that's a
it's worth doing.
That's a hidden gem.
That's another hidden gem. Exactly.
That's a
Nice.
beautiful one.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if Teresa's still on or not, but she's hoping we'll be in person, not virtual, in September, because she's going to do the Badlands and Black Hills of South Dakota.
Oh, that's great.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And
bet.
Emily's is coming up in this month, right? Next month.
Yep.
Mhm.
I'll be doing.
Visiting Milwaukee.
Yep, I will be doing Milwaukee, and you'll also see appearance from my fiance Carl, and we'll talk about our trip to Milwaukee on May 19th at 7 p.m.
Oh, that's why you
That'll
picked
be
me.
fun.
Yeah.
Joanne, I suggested that she maybe have beer for that one because that is what made Milwaukee famous.
I know. I wish we could sell alcohol at the library.
Yeah, no.
Right,
I think
I
that would
know.
get us in trouble.
It
The
would.
reason
No,
why
we'd do it. I know it would.
program in which I mix non-alcoholic drinks.
But it is a good idea, you gotta admit.
we have just as a good idea for our little treats. Like, next month.
But of course, if you're all doing it and watching virtually from home, you could
Yeah.
have a drink while you're watching the
Right.
program.
That's
True.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure Carl will probably ordering some Milwaukee beer between now and
Right.
all right.
Right. You can make recommendations.
Yes, I'm sure he would. All right. So does anybody have any more questions for Cindy and Frank?
No, but thank you very much.
Thank you. It was
You're
great.
welcome. We enjoyed it. It
Yeah,
was very
thank you
fun.
for your kind attention.
Right.
Thank you so much there, Joanna, and everybody here. Really appreciated you discussing your travels to
Excellent presentation. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
You and thank you again for your help like on Monday.
Oh, yeah, you're most
Thanks for
welcome.
being with us.
Our co-host. Okay.
All right. Well, have a
Night.
good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
In May,
Bye.
Bye.
And I,
our summer break there. One
Yeah.
more summer break.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.